It's kind of like if you imagine the nervous system, it's like a pop bottle. It's been shaken up, or soda, whatever you guys call it. There's like foam at the top. You don't want to just open it up, right? Because it's just going to kind of overflow. I often hear at retreats, people are like, oh, my body started doing TRE, and it's like, yes and not, right? So it's your body was shaking. But TRE is really specific approach to that shaking.
Welcome to Simply Always Awake, of the channel where we talk about awakening, realization, trauma work, shadow work, and all the things. Today I have a friend with me, Kate Alvo, who is a teacher of TRE, and we're going to dive into that quite a bit today, actually. The TRE specifically, I did interview David Berselli, who characterized the technique. If you want to check that interview out, that's a great one. But this is going to be a little bit more in depth from the standpoint of somebody who teaches and facilitates TRE, who's also benefited from it herself, and she's going to tell us her experience and also tell us a little bit about who it's for, what are the challenges that can come up with learning it on your own, how to learn it on your own, how to work with facilitators, when to work with facilitators, and so forth. Because I do mention this modality quite a bit, and I think it's time to unpack it a little bit more with a facilitator. So, hi, Kate.
Mm-hmm. How's it going?
How are you doing? I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Butterflies are still there, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Kate, I've seen Kate do a little facilitation in one of my retreats. We just kind of very casually set up a time during 1 or 2 days where she could work with people who already knew TRE and dial it in a little bit with them, which was really good. I've done TRE myself, and I think it does help. I had Chris Guimond work with me once and kind of dial in the process a little bit. So I think it's valuable to work with facilitators and so forth. But let's start with you. Tell me about or just tell us a little bit about yourself maybe, and then kind of how you got interested in TRE or found out about it.
Sure. Yeah. So, so I'm from Canada. Where do I begin? So I guess I'll begin sort of like in the middle of my life, which is when I started, when I started encountering my trauma, I guess, which was, I spent a bunch of years building a straw bale house, a natural house with my ex-partner. We had I would characterize it as a toxic relationship, of one of those relationships where there's a lot of really great things and then really bad things. And that stirred up a lot for me. And when we split up, I ended up kind of alone with the house. I had to finish the house. There was a lot of work to do. And we had done also permaculture training. So we'd been doing working on the land around it, planted a bunch of fruit trees. I was at the time also starting a business with a couple other women doing permaculture design. I was also starting to teach about eco building. Anyway, so I had this whole thing. My career was kind of starting to bloom, I would say. And simultaneously, I was breaking up with my ex-partner, and I was living in a town where I didn't really have much in the way of support. So I didn't have when we moved there, we just went straight into the house building, and just kind of we're so focused on house building that we didn't take a lot of time to kind of create community and all that. So by the time we split up, I didn't have a good friend network. I had a few friends here and there, but it felt really isolating to me because it was not really a great time to make friends when you're grieving a breakup. And anyway, sure. So I spent a few years in that house working on that business, trying to finish the house, trying to take care of the land, trying to manage volunteers. It was just a lot. And in maybe early 2017, I had what I would characterize as a nervous breakdown. I remember the moment, the precise moment. I was in the shower, and I just all of a sudden kind of fell to the floor, and I was just weeping, and I was just I can't do this alone. I can't do this anymore. And basically, I would say, like, now from my perspective, my system was overwhelmed and I went into shutdown, basically. That brought me into, a state where I just couldn't, like, I would wake up in the morning, I was unable to start my day, unable to get anything going. And luckily, I have a very good mother who was very supportive, and she came and helped me get things done and help me move through that period of time. And so during that time, so my mom is friends with Chris Guimond, and during that time, Chris had introduced TRE to my mom. And I can't remember now, sort of like 2017 is a bit of a blur for me because I was going through so much. But I was kind of like trying all the things. I was journaling, meditating. I did family constellation. I did therapy. And I ended up going to an ayahuasca retreat in early 2018, which was really, really helpful for me. And I believe it was after that my mom kind of, she came up to my place, and she handed me David Berceli's book, which is an amazing book. If anybody hasn't read it, the Revolutionary Trauma Release Process. It's amazing. And she was just like, here, you do these exercises. I had no idea what it was. I had no context. She was just like, here. She kind of like opened it to the end part where there's like the photos of the guy doing the exercises and how to get into the tremors. But I hadn't read the book. And she just kind of like led me through like the exercises and showed me. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. But I didn't really know like what it was doing. I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know really anything. I had very little self-awareness back then. I would say like, yeah, sort of the ayahuasca retreat was the beginning of like looking inwards and being able to, have insights about myself, or whatever. So I kind of was like, okay, this TRE thing, interesting, but I didn't have, I would say, like a breakthrough experience with it at first. Like I think Chris did one of the first times she had.
Can I ask you a little bit about the first part? So when you said that you mentioned like the exercises and the trembling, can you just describe for someone who maybe actually doesn't know what it is, what that's about, that part?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, the way TRE is taught, like traditionally, this is not the way I teach it, but traditionally is taught as a series of 7 exercises that's starting with gentle stretching and fatiguing of the muscles. So we're not doing like big, heavy muscular like exercises where we're trying to build muscle. We're just trying to get a little bit of fatigue just to activate the muscles a bit. So starting from the ankles and moving all the way up to the hips. And they're kind of, a lot of them are sort of like awkward positions that the body wouldn't usually be in. And so while we're in these positions, it's also kind of eliciting this trembling that people may be familiar with from having done, exercise or whatever. And the final exercise, you lay down on the floor, you've got your knees bent, and you're kind of like have your feet in a butterfly position. So the bottoms of your feet together, and you're kind of raising the knees, and the tremoring starts to become engaged.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Did that start for you right away?
Yeah. On the first session, I don't actually have, like, as I say, like my first beginnings with TRE were very like, this is interesting. I remember thinking like, whoa, this is really cool. How come nobody ever told me that my body could do this? But I didn't have like a big breakthrough or like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever done.
Sure.
So I don't have a super clear memory of that first session. Yeah.
Did you start doing it daily at that point, or how did you guide your
I think it was a little more casual at first. And I think probably it was only after I moved back to Montreal at the end of 2018, and I started like getting to know Chris a little bit more, and Chris was very helpful, with all the things that she was always recommending and really supportive. And she basically, was saying, oh, do TRE 20 minutes a day for 5 days a week, and just see what happens. And at that point, like, Chris had done her first training, but she hadn't completed it. And then we did the training together. Actually, we started the training together in 2020. So that's when she completed it. But so basically at that point, like, I think, the understanding was a little bit less nuanced than it is today. And so I was kind of like, I was doing it, but I didn't have any body awareness. Nobody ever taught me how to feel my body, even though I've done Vipassana for like, I started Vipassana in 2009, I believe, or 2007. I can't remember. So I'd been doing Vipassana. Vipassana was always really difficult for me because it would take me an hour to do a body scan because I couldn't find any sensations, right? So I had very little body awareness. Nobody had ever tuned me into that. And I think that's very common in our world. Like, we're not taught to be in the body at all. So I didn't know that I was trying to look for some, like, what I feel like. I didn't know how to tune into what was happening in my nervous system. I knew nothing about like polyvagal theory. I didn't know anything about sort of like the different nervous system states. So what it means to be in fight or flight, what it means to be in freeze, what it means to have the nervous system get overwhelmed. Like, that was all just not part of my vocabulary, right, at the time. So that's it. So for me, that whole initial like practicing of TRE was just kind of like I was following a prescription, but I didn't know what I was getting out of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did it start to dial you into body sensations, like more, you said body awareness, or you called it body awareness, which is a whole other conversation. It's fascinating when people say they can't feel their body, because I'm like, man, maybe was I like that? But it's been a long time, so I'm sure I was, but yeah.
Well, I could maybe talk about, like, so for me, I didn't really start getting what TRE was doing until I took the training. So when I started the training at the beginning of the pandemic, we were the first cohort that was online because we were supposed to start and then the pandemic started. So, and I remember I can actually relate like the experience that I had on the second weekend. So it happens over 3 weekends over a year. So the second weekend of the training, on the very first evening of it, we did a group shake. It's online. And I didn't listen to I just had this little voice that come up. We were shaking. We'd been shaking maybe for like 5 or 6 minutes. And I had this little voice that came up that was like, I think you should stop now. This is enough. And I was like, it's fine. We're almost done, kind of thing. Right. So I ignored that voice. And what happened was my system went into overwhelm.
Wow.
And it took me until probably afternoon the next day to really get regulated again. And they had like put me in a breakout room with a provider that was like guiding me through, helping me ground, like making me stamp my feet, walk around, like all of that stuff. And I remember we had one of the books we had to read for the training was called Full Body Presence. And that book is really this woman, and she's guiding you through like feeling into the body. And I remember being really triggered by her meditations because they were trying to guide you into the body. And it would be like, feel the difference between your left leg and your right leg. And I was just like, I don't know, I can't feel that difference. And I was just like, I think like, yeah, it just really triggered me to know that I wasn't able to feel into it in the way that she seemed to be guiding us to do. And for me, it took a while before I started to be able to feel into my body more. But it was really like that training was a learning process. And actually what happened with that, like after that overwhelm, is they recommended for me to stop the training that year, to do a year of myself, to do a little somatic experiencing or some other like therapies, and then come back to the training. So that's what I did. And I completed in June 2022.
Okay. All right. And when you went back to complete the training and started doing it again, was your experience then different? Did it feel more therapeutic? Did it have more, was there more depth to the experience than there was when you started, or?
The training is honestly a little bit vague to me because I feel like my TRE process actually happened when I started facilitating more, which was really interesting for me because like that initial experience where I got overwhelmed and didn't listen to my intuition was like a first kind of like little message, like, hey, you've got intuition and you can listen to it and not listen to it, right? And I didn't listen to it that time. And so when I started working with people with TRE, that's when I started really, because I was almost like because I was guiding other people to tune into what was happening, I was becoming more aware myself in the process of what was in my own body and my system and like tuning into, yeah, my own intuition. That was really kind of a big part of it for me.
Mm.
And it was really interesting too, because when I started working with people, I actually remember during the training, I was working with Chris at one point, and we were exchanging sessions together, and she was lying down, and I just had this intuition to put my hand on her head, and it just brought her tremors like right up. And she hadn't experienced that before. And it was like we were both giggling about it. And it was really interesting. So there's something about working with people that really helped me kind of, I think I became more attuned to people, and I became more attuned to myself. And just kind of like develop that intuition to know like when to suggest, like that I can see it. It's like I can just see it, and I just know like if the person's legs need to be a little bit farther apart, or like their feet need to be a little bit farther away or whatever. And it's just like, and I don't know why, I can't explain to you. But anyway, so for me, that's kind of one of the things that I found the most interesting about the process.
You found your niche.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way about facilitation a lot of times. Like, I don't know why I say what I say. I really don't. I have no idea. And it just comes and seems to work, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, right on. Well, maybe can you just give us like a bit of an overview of like, what do you think you've overall gotten out of TRE as a practice yourself? What kinds of changes have you noticed in yourself and so forth?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing I would say to start off with is my reactivity has gone way down. Like I have this memory of, I think it was 2 years ago, I was interacting with a family member who was extremely angry at me, and I was just standing there, and they were just yelling at me, and I was just kind of there. I wasn't cut off. I was present. But there was like nothing happening inside, and I was just like, okay. And I was just allowing it. And there was no like aftermath from it either. I was just like, I felt fine, So that for me was a really striking moment, because prior to that, my like within my family system, like we had a lot of reactivity. And that's not to say that all my reactivity is gone, and not to say that it's all gone especially within my family, but I've noticed my reactivity go way down. As I was saying before, also just like having like tuned into my own system. So being able to recognize what's happening in my nervous system, which is something that was just like not even a thing for me before. So, and part of that, and like understanding, I think the theory behind polyvagal theory for me, helped me take off a layer of self-blame. So if I'm like, I was living in a toxic toxic situation with some roommates a few years ago, and things like really built up. And at some point I just like blew my fuse, and I was slamming doors and I was yelling. And I think, and luckily I was going through the TRE training at the time. And so I was like really in the depths of like understanding polyvagal theory and understanding nervous system overwhelm and all that stuff. And it was like, okay, that was just my nervous system that got overwhelmed. And I found that like pretty liberating too. And I think the interesting part about that is that it's also given me that same understanding when I see somebody else who's dysregulated. So I'm not reacting so much to them, because it's like almost like I'm seeing them through a trauma lens, and seeing that they're not doing that on purpose. That's coming from something that's happening within them. That's not their fault. So I feel like it's increased my compassion.
Beautiful.
And I mean, I'm sure there's probably more I could say about what I got out of it, but those, the major points for me. Yeah,
I was going to say, it's pretty remarkable to have, the litmus test of the family member yelling at you and actually not having a response, not shutting down, but not feeling triggered by it, and just being able to take it in, but not carry it out of that moment, and realize it's just not about you, and that person can process. That's okay. I mean, that's saying a lot, actually. That's really like, to me, that says a lot. That's not low hanging fruit. I mean, that shows some true equanimity in the system. So, okay, cool. So I think we talked ahead of time a little bit about how to kind of unpack this. And this is, again, geared toward anyone who wants to learn this process and wants to, or they already know it and they want to dial it in more with a facilitator. I do know many people who have actually found significant benefit from working with facilitators who had already learned TRE personally, and I've seen it happen. So I do think I can endorse that for sure. But I think we might want to start with learning it on your own. Can you just give us a little bit about that? Like how could you go about that? Is it safe to learn it on your own? Is it valuable? Do you recommend it, and so forth?
Yep. So you can definitely learn it on your own. There's a free, well, it's not free anymore. So there's an online course that was created by Richmond Heath back during the pandemic to support people during the pandemic, actually. And he's got, in the beginning of that, he's got like a self-assessment. So there's a bunch of questions that you've got to answer. And then if you score, let's say, 8 or above, then learning on your own is probably okay. Anyway, he's got like these ways of rating it. And that goes through kind of different questions like, your trauma histories. So if you have a history of mental, physical, sexual abuse or trauma, your medical history. Do you have any current medical problems, like major medical issues, heart conditions, Parkinson's, fibromyalgia, stuff like that? Mm-hmm. Have you had a recent operation? Have you had an accident? So there's a series of questions that you can go through on that. And I would recommend anybody who's considering trying learning TRE, I would recommend going through that course and going through those questions first. So, and then you can kind of see if there's sort of three, if it's you score 6 or below, then you definitely should work with a provider. If you score between 7 and 8 or 9 or whatever, if you then consider working with a provider. And if you score 10, then you're good. So that's fine. So you can do that. However, I'm still a proponent of learning with a provider. So you can learn what you can do. Like if you feel comfortable and you're excited to learn on your own or whatever, go through the course, practice for a while, and then maybe after that, book a session with a provider. And the reason I say that is because of my own experience, where I just didn't get it at first. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't understand the theory. Everybody's different too, especially I think in this community, there's a very broad range of, I guess, where people are in terms of how much trauma they've worked through, where they are in the awakening path, sort of how much body work they've done. Anyway, so I think people here are, aware enough to judge for themselves what is good for them. That said, I've worked with several people from this community who had previously learned TRE either on their own, from a video, or from a provider. And then they'd been working, having their own TRE practice for a while. And then they had a session with me, either a group session or one-on-one. And I've been seeing, I actually contacted a bunch of them over the weekend, just to kind of see, what is it that you got out of that session? And I got a very wide, broad kind of array of responses. And so I guess I'm trying to think how to structure this. So I could say sort of I'll give a little summary of what I heard from people, what they got out of it. So working with me after having had their own practice for a while, I had some people say that the co-regulation was important. So they had learned and they'd been practicing TRE on their own, but they didn't have that co-regulation. So co-regulation is where you've got somebody else's nervous system helping to regulate your nervous system. So if you are really dysregulated, you're really anxious or whatever, and you have somebody who's very calm with you, then that can help regulate you. And for people who have, let's say, who grew up without proper regulation in the house, because when we're kids, when we're babies, we're dependent on our parents for co-regulation. And without that proper co-regulation, we can't learn self-regulation. So without having that piece in place when we're little, then learning it on your own is very difficult, if not impossible. So I think that was a little bit my situation. which might have been why like I was not, I didn't know how to regulate myself before, and TRE really helped me with that. So, but it was only when I started working with the class and being, guided through it that started to be noticeable for me. So, so I did have people who mentioned that the co-regulation piece was important for them. They were able to access maybe some like deeper emotions. I had people talk about learning the different, like sort of different positions, how to use different positions for the body tremoring to get the tremors to move through in different ways. People talked about, one person in particular, Sasha Stevens, who you've interviewed a couple times. She sent me a really cool voice note this morning and said that the thing that she got out of the session with me was that she learned, she had been practicing TRE on her own, but she kind of was always taking it as like a physical practice, like, oh, this is just the body thing, right? But she, it was in our session where I told her, like, this can actually be helpful in your awakening process. And she just it hadn't even occurred to her before. And so what she said is that she's been using it since then. That like really opened her eyes to that. And since then she's been using it actually to help quiet her mind. So she gets stuck like in a big thought storm or whatever, then she'll just do a little bit of TRE and it'll just bring her right out of it. So, so stuff like that. But then, I'm trying to think of the other things. Anyway, it's been there's sort of like a wide variety. Oh, I know. I remember one person said, one person who was at the Taoist retreat with me, because I led a couple of TRE sessions over there. He said that doing that really helped him because he'd also learned from a video. I don't think he did the course, but he was learned from a video. And when he was trying to get the tremors going, he couldn't get them going because he was overdoing the exercises. He was doing them as if you were trying to make muscles, right? So like, yeah. So it's a little bit like there's like these nuances, right? And in how much to do. Where, like, how to recognize your limits. One person talked to me about how when we did our session, I tuned her into the fact that she was using her breath to self-regulate during tremoring. So as a facilitator, I invite people to use the breath as a tool of observation and not a tool of regulation. So during the tremoring. So what we're looking for is for the tremors to regulate the breath. So when I see somebody take a deep breath, I say, did you do that or did the body do that? They say, oh, I did that. Then I say, well, that for me is a sign that the body needs to take a rest. So it's like we're recognizing when the nervous system is giving signs that, oh, this is too much. And then we can take a rest, let the body come into rest, relax again, and then come back into the tremor. And then the tremor can move through the body a little bit more. So it's like tuning into all those little details that, that I think, like, yeah.
I think I was just looking at the list you made because you made the nice bullet points here. Yeah. Okay, good. Oh, and then, confirmation that someone's doing the exercises correctly. I've had people tell me that sometimes when they learn on their own, they're like, I don't know, am I doing it? Is the trembling real? Am I causing it? Like they get a little in their head about it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Super common. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. And you can work over Zoom and in person as well, right? Just FYI. Okay. For anyone not aware of that. Okay. And let's see here.
I think I wanted to talk about like, oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just looking at your points, but I was going to say the next one was like, when does it not work for people or what problems come into play that you see? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I actually put that point because I've heard you say that before. I've heard you like talk about TRE and say, oh, but like, it works really well for some people, but maybe not for others. So my perspective on that is that if it seems to not, and I'm not saying that TRE has to work amazingly for everybody, because obviously every system is different or whatever, but if somebody's tried it and they're kind of like, they've tried it on their own and they're like, I don't really know if it's working for me, they could be in a situation that I was in. Right? Where I just didn't have the awareness. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know how to tune into the nervous system. Like part of my job as a provider is to help people know what to look for, or the session, after the session, during the session, and then between sessions. Right? So for me, um, I like to point people to like, how do you feel between the sessions? Like during the session is one thing, but the way you're going to know if it's working for you is between the sessions, right? So if you just do one TRE session, you're not going to notice any difference. It's a practice. It's something that you've got to keep up for, between 3 and 5 times a week for a couple of years, usually depending on the person, could be more, could be less, and then slowly reducing, and it becomes sort of more of a maintenance practice. But if you just do like 1 or 2 TRE sessions, you're like, I don't know if this is working for me. Well, you haven't given it a chance, right? And so it's going to move through your system at a different rhythm as it will move through somebody else's system, right? So some people are ready and they'll just have like a big breakthrough on the first try. And other people, it'll take a little bit of time for them to kind of like notice what's happening. So first thing is like try giving it a month or 2 months or 3 months before judging if it's working for you. And then know what to look for also. Am I less reactive? Am I less anxious? Am I generally feeling better? Am I connecting better with people? Am I feeling into my body more? Like all of those things are signs that it's working, right? So, yeah. So the other thing was, what did I put in the bullet points there? I think I talked about not knowing, that point about like overdoing the exercises. So not even being able to get the tremors going because you're just maybe not tuning into how to get them going. So working with a facilitator can help with that, or doing the online course. It's really well guided in that.
So one of the ones I've heard from a couple people, and actually through Chris just describing it, is some people have so much trauma that it's very easy to actually overwhelm them even with a small amount of TRE. So that is interesting to me, and I'm curious what to look for. What are the warning signs? What do you see that would tell someone do like 2 minutes of TRE once a week or something? Like really minimal amounts.
Yeah, so that for me is like, so I've had a few clients like that. When I very, very first started working with TRE, I don't know what what was up, but I got like really difficult clients at first. I had one person who during, like sometimes you can tell during the session, most of the time you can tell during the session, but like she just had so much trauma that she wasn't able to tremor for more than 30 seconds without having a flashback, like PTSD flashback. So for her, and even to get her to the point of starting to do the tremor, I had to spend a good 45 minutes with her, like doing, little nervous system regulation resets, helping her ground. Sometimes it would take her outside. Like it was a whole process getting her even to the point of being able to do a little bit. That was an extreme case. I worked with somebody who had a lot of anxiety, like really bad anxiety, to the point where she would have kind of like adrenaline rushes during the day. And so we started off with generally when people have a lot of anxiety, you want to start off with a really small amount of TRE at first. And I would say like that if you want to give like a general rule, doing 1 minute per day at first. It's kind of like if you imagine the nervous system, it's like a pop bottle that's been shaken up, or soda, whatever you guys call it. There's like foam at the top. You don't want to just open it up, right? Because it's just going to kind of overflow. So you just want to like let off the pressure a little bit at a time. So if somebody does too much, then they'll notice their anxiety getting worse. They might, sleep worse. They might have really difficult emotions coming up, stuff like that. So you just want to really back off at first. And it's sort of like with TRE and any nervous system regulation practice, when you're starting off, you want to do a little bit at a time. So less is more at first, until you start to build capacity in the nervous system, and then slowly you can start to increase it. And the more experience you have with TRE, kind of the longer sessions you need to get something out of it, right? So, yeah.
Okay,
so
that's helpful.
Worsening of symptoms is, if your symptoms are worsening, it's not that TRE isn't working for you. It's just that maybe you're not tuning into how you need to be dialed into how to make it work for you, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Good to hear. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, okay. Yeah. And I mean, can you describe maybe just a little bit about if you work with somebody, do you recommend working with them one time or a series of times or just periodically over a year? Or how do you find it works best?
So if somebody's just learning, if they first start learning, other people recommend fewer. I recommend 5 sessions to get going, because the first session is a little bit longer and is taking time to get to know the person, get to know their history, kind of know where I'm starting out. So the first 3 sessions, let's say, are helping them get sort of established and allowing them to get a little bit of a practice between the sessions so that when they come to the next session, they can tell me how it's been going and I can help them dial in a little bit more. And then spacing out the last 2 sessions a little bit farther apart. So that's generally how I work. And the reason for that is a few reasons. One is that it helps them with the accountability. So it helps them actually get going with their practice, because starting any new practice can be hard for anybody. So having that support and knowing I'm coming back for another session and there's like a follow-up and everything, I think that's really supportive for people. And having sort of more sessions can help, because generally when people start with TRE, most of the time the tremors are starting from the hips down.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, like I was in an advanced training with David Berselli once, and there was she was a TRE facilitator, and she'd been teaching TRE for 10 years, and she herself had never had tremors above the waist. And then just with one facilitation, he got them all the way up to her head. So the beginning few sessions is kind of like allow the body to work it out by itself. And then the last couple sessions, there's a little bit more like suggestions and changing positions or different facilitations that can help get the tremors moving through the body. I have had people have tremors move all the way up through the body in the first session, but that's more rare.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
And then if somebody has already a TRE practice like that's established and they just kind of need some fine tuning, then just like punctual once in a while whenever they feel the need for it. And I would recommend generally the body can get into these patterns in the same way that we get into like mind patterns that just kind of stay. When we go through the TRE process, it's going to move through the body in different ways at different times. But at some point, after a certain amount of time, the body just kind of like gets stuck in a pattern. So that's a really good time to go see a facilitator, just to get them to see if they can see kind of what's going on and help get something else opening up. Because if you have the same stuck pattern and you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you're probably not going to be opening up new stuff and getting into deeper layers. And so those are good times, to get tuned in and get suggestions on how to get it moving differently. Yeah.
Awesome. Right on. You also made a note here about that it can be valuable to use different providers at different times.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like that's been something that's been I mean, for me, I think, as I said before, like the learning process of TRE really happened after I finished the training and I started working and I took some more, they don't call them advanced trainings anymore, but anyway, I took some other TRE trainings with different facilitators, different trainers. I've had private sessions with different people. I do an exchange with another provider every now and then. And what I've noticed is that each person that I work with will elicit something different in my body. So, and of course, also, depends on when I'm working with them or what's going on at the time. But, I've worked with Richmond before, Richmond Heath, who's a TRE Australia trainer. And he got my body doing all kinds of weird stuff. I had a friend in the room with me, so we were doing this online, and he just got my friend to put his fingers under my feet, and it just got my body to do all this different stuff. We were doing it standing up. So every time I do a session with another facilitator, I'm learning something new, but also the attunement is different with different people. Just like with any kind of therapy or any relationship, you're gonna I guess resonate differently with different people, and that difference in in that relationship is going to bring different things to the surface. Yeah, there's and also, I mean, I'd say like each facilitator is going to have their own kind of specialty. So different TRE facilitators have, like, maybe some are yoga specialists, maybe some are physiotherapists, and so you can kind of, depending on what's going on for you and depending on how you resonate, what you're looking for. You know, there's one who used to be a chiropractor. Like, anyway, so there's a huge variety of TRE facilitators in the world, and yeah, I would recommend trying several.
Awesome. Yeah, I also thought of another indicator that you might want to work with a facilitator if you haven't been, and that would be if something big starts coming up or something really changes, like some big trauma starts coming through or something unexpected happens during your practice. Probably could be really helpful to work with a facilitator then.
Totally. Yeah, and having that co-regulation, like, is just always, I find, like, I mean, I've heard this from a lot of my clients, that working on their own, it goes well, but when they come for a session with me, then like a lot more deep stuff can come up. And I think that's just the nature of, it happens to me every time I see you. I just cry. When I'm at retreat, I melt.
No, I believe it too. And I hear these things. I hear from people who work with you or work with Chris and have one session and something totally changes about their practice, and then something changes about their experience in life and so forth. Yeah. So, yeah, I like this statement here. You said involuntary movement is not TRE, but TRE is involuntary movement. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, involuntary movement does not belong to something called TRE. It belongs to the mammalian body. It's something that's innate. Animals do it, humans do it. So, and especially this shaking mechanism that we're talking about. And so, sort of like, that's sort of like the physiological context why, if your body starts moving, it doesn't mean that you're doing TRE. It's just your body moving. And then in a more historical context, there are shaking practices all around the world, and there have been for probably millennia. There are, different tribes. There's like the Shakers, the Quakers, the Kalahari Bushmen of Africa. There's a tribe in, I think in Washington, an Indian tribe. There's a bunch of traditions of using shaking for healing, but also for spiritual connection, right? And there's Kundalini. So anyway, there's all these different practices, but it doesn't mean they're doing TRE, right? So what TRE is bringing to it, so TRE was developed in, I think, the 90s, and TRE really has a trauma-informed approach. So those other practices are often done, let's say, in a group, maybe with a shaman or like in a spiritual setting or something like that. And what TRE is bringing to it is really like the awareness of going gently, working through the trauma. And so the approach is different. So when I often hear at retreats, people are like, oh, my body started doing TRE, and it's like, yes and not. Right. So its body was shaking. But TRE is really specific approach to that shaking. Not that one is better than the other. It's just, it's just.
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, I'm really glad you clarified that. When you mentioned Kundalini, so I get a lot of people asking me about Kundalini because they get it. They suddenly have these energetic movements and big releases in the body and all the things. So if you encounter somebody who has Kundalini experience, spontaneous Kundalini, Kriyas and all that, how do you work with them with TRE? Do you recommend TRE? I'm assuming you would recommend definitely working with a facilitator in that case.
Yeah, what I would recommend in that case is probably to work with a facilitator who has themselves experience with Kundalini. So I have worked with a couple of people. So I've worked with one now. I don't know if it was what it was, Kundalini, not Kundalini, what it was. She was having spontaneous movements that were kind of like, it almost looked like she was reliving other people's trauma. She had, I mean, it was quite astounding, the kinds of things that I saw with her. And I tried to teach her sort of like the TRE approach. This was way back in the beginning too. She came to one of our breathwork sessions, and like, so she had all this stuff going on. She said, I have Kundalini. And we were like, okay, that's fine, come, but I worked with her for a while. I was supporting her for a while, but at some point I was like, I'm not like what's happening in her body was not TRE. It wasn't the tremoring. It was something entirely almost otherworldly, I would say.
Mm.
And I did refer her to TRE Wiseblood, who's a TRE facilitator in Australia who had a big Kundalini awakening, and so she supports people with Kundalini, and she knows a lot about TRE. She has a different approach to TRE, a very, very like conservative, I would say, approach to it, but that might just be based on what on her own experience. So I refer people to her. I've worked with somebody else also who has Kundalini, and I tried to have a TRE session with him, and it's always kind of funny because it's like, you know, I actually had a long conversation with TRE Wiseblood about this because I was curious, like, what is TRE, what is Kundalini, and it's not always clear what's happening. So I just like rather if somebody's really having a lot of Kundalini stuff happening, refer them to somebody who knows a little bit more about it.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really good to know. And then you have another bullet point here, the main obstacle for people with TRE.
Yes. So main obstacle for people is consistency. So practice, right? So as I was saying before, it's not, you can't just do it once or twice and then you're like, oh, I'm done. It's not therapy. It's not a one and done thing. You have to practice and you've got to be consistent with it to get results. So I want to start offering a weekly TRE group shake. I know Chris offers one every second week on Sundays, and I'm thinking of offering one kind of in the midweek. Just to help people with their practice, but also particularly in today's political climate, I think people need extra support through that. So it's going to be on donation. There's going to be a minimum amount to pay to save your spot, but also just to mention, I'm trilingual. So anybody who speaks Spanish or French, they're welcome to ask me questions in those languages, and I'm happy to answer.
That's awesome. Very good resource. So how are they going to find out about that? Should we just send them to your website?
We can, so we can put 3 links maybe under here. So we can put one link to the online course. We can put a link to my website in general, and then we put a link specifically to the events page for the.
Perfect. Kate,
awesome.
What else would you like to say? Anything else? Do we miss anything? Do you want to give any, broad advice for people moving forward as we end this conversation?
Be curious. I think that's the main number one thing, like with your TRE practice, be curious. The same as, I guess, if you're working on awakening, just curiosity is the key. So not looking for anything in particular, and being curious about what's happening in your body and your system, and reach out for help when you need it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for all your wisdom and knowledge and clear explanations. I'm sure people are going to get a lot out of this. I will have all of those links we talked about right below this video under description. So make sure you click on those links and check out Kate's stuff. Thanks again.
Thank you, Angelo.